Okay, hello. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for signing up to today's meeting, Translators Meeting. My name is Ramses Cabrera. I think you may know me from the different announcements I made via. All right. I made via Facebook. I'm a professional translator from. I have already been doing this job for about 4 years, almost 5 years already, and actually I am combining it with different activities such as the ones we are doing currently now. Mainly I would like to also help our colleagues, also, that is to say, I would like to help you, mainly those of you who are attending this meeting, either via live meeting, live connection, live call, or also those of you who are attending via a recording. You will all receive the recording of this meeting today, and I will probably send it in around a week. Actually, I will be giving these meetings in English, although I know some of you do speak Spanish. But since many people from many places in the world have signed up and they don't speak Spanish, for instance, people from Spanish people usually don't speak Spanish, but that is another completely different topic already. I mean, people from places such as Africa, India, Asia, from different places in Asia. So I would like to make this as easily accessible as possible. In any event, thank you very much to those of you who are attending the live meeting. And I am actually very, very pleased to meet you and to share with you some tools, some tips, some changes of perspective that I am absolutely sure that will be of very, very, very much help to you, not only in regards to your professional tasks, but also in any kind of creation that you want to make. That's actually one of the basic, let's say, hypothesis that I would like to propose to the world of translation. That is to say that we cannot restrict translation to simply a linguistic endeavor. It's very, very, very useful to understand translation as something that encompasses much more of the world, and actually, let me anticipate, it actually encompasses everything. And the sooner we understand that, the better we will be able and we will manage to use that in order to, for instance, as I, in a certain romantic way, I say, to translate your dreams, your aspirations, your aims, your objectives, your goals into reality. In any event, that is something we will get to step by step. First of all, I would like that those of you who are hearing and listening and seeing this meeting live, that if you want, for instance, if you're here, it's basically mainly due to what I have seen in Facebook and such. You will probably have questions or doubts, or you have a situation. Oh, okay, you have a problem and you would like to learn what to do to solve that. If I am capable of helping you, I would very much like to do so. Although let me phrase this in a clear way, I cannot, so to speak, supervise your journey, the things you're doing specifically, personally. But if I can explain some tools, some tips that I am learning and I continue to apply every day in regards to translation, then I would very much like to do so. As in, if I can help you in any way, please, first of all, if you would like to, well, to talk about what you want to achieve, what kind of problems you would like to solve, etc., etc. I think that we would be making the first steps towards towards reaching the objectives of these meetings that, let me tell you, will continue from now on a monthly basis. I would like to hold these meetings with you and with more and more of you every month, so that with using my experience, and not only my experience, as we will see later, what I mean with these things about experience, whether it's actually so essential in the world of translation and everywhere and anywhere else. But using that, I would like to help you in any way possible, and impossible and necessary and contingent and everything. So first of all, thank you very much. I think it's Yara. I think that it's let me check this out first. Can you listen okay? Can you listen well and such? If you can write it down on the chat or turn on your microphone to speak, it would be very nice. Has this been heard? Hello? If you can... okay.
Hi.
All right.
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Thank you very much. Very well. So would you like to make some questions about the world of translation, of professional translation and such, that I could help, and that I could help you, yes, to answer and to solve?
Yes, I have some questions. So
very good.
I can.
Yes, please.
Okay, so my first question is so about your, I don't know, background. So do you are freelance or?
Yes, I'm a freelancer. Actually, I started, yes, and I continue to be a freelancer since 2014, yes. Before I completed my first master's degree, yes, actually around November, more or less. That's why I say that it's like 4.5 years, more or less, before November. Before November 2014, I had already started my own business, and currently, although my official legal status is freelance, according to the specific legal norms in Spain, I also function as a company. As in, for instance, I'm starting to receive jobs and job offers from or for linguistic combinations that are not the ones I personally handle. But even so, I complete those tasks, those jobs, by hiring other translators. That is why, let me tell you this now. I don't know how many of you are professional, as in, not professional, how many of you are officially capable translators, as in how many of you can issue invoices, how many of you, etc., and how many of you are students. Of course, this will be heard in the future, but I hope so, by students too. And in any event, when you are already working as a translator, as an official translator, go to my website, agenciaprofecy.com. I'm going to write that on the chat. Okay, agenciaprofecy.com, and please go there and sign up in the translators form, because I use that to contact translators for the jobs I get, as in to hire them and then do a collaboration and such. Very good.
Okay.
Yes, that's
Nice.
well. If you want to know a little bit about my background, perhaps you and more people too, I'm mainly specialized in legal translation.
Okay.
Actually, I currently, as I said in the announcement, in the advertisement for these activities, I currently work with the European Commission through a license agreement. It's not exactly a license agreement, but through a public contract, through a public agreement, I mean, with a company in Greece. That is to say, the European, I don't know how many of you know this, but perhaps it could be useful for you if you want to learn about how this works. The European Commission has its own internal teams where they work in Brussels. Actually, I did an internship period, 1 month in Brussels with the European Commission, the Spanish DGT, Directorate General of Translation in Spanish. I mean, there are different DGTs, and perhaps it's like 30 people or so for each DGT. And then it's obvious, since the quantity of work, the amount of work that the European Commission and different legal bodies in the European Union is so large, so large every day, that they also hire external companies through a public agreement. There's a very long process and such, and these companies get a part of that work, and through these companies, we as freelancers can access that too and work from our homes with texts from the European Commission and many other bodies. For instance, currently I am participating in a special process with this company in Greece to get a part of the work that the European Parliament produces, to translate, I mean, into Spanish. It's kind of for me, it's a very interesting process, because, and not only process, but the field of work, I think it's very useful, because, I mean, I think it's got more substance than translating a manual, a handbook for using a washing machine. It's completely respectable. I mean, washing machines are all right. But for me personally, the situation of the world, what's going on, the different relationships, the different new laws and directives and rules and regulations, for me personally, it's that field of work, it's much more interesting than simply a for using a TV. I have done that too, but I prefer the legal field. It's not simply legal because it has a lot of social situations and such. There's a lot of fields actually within the European Commission. But I personally very much like that. The good thing for those of you who are hearing these is good news. And with this, I completely finish the first stanza. My first answer to your question is that I didn't actually depend on, and I didn't depend, and I don't depend, and I think it would be very useful for you to learn that you don't actually depend on how much experience you have for these kinds of things. As in, I had my internship in the European Commission like 4 years ago, more or less. And people told me 4 years ago, no, 5 years ago, sorry, 5 years ago, I think it was in 2013 or 2014, more or less, that period of time. And the thing is that people told me, oh, you have an internship in the European Commission, you have completed that, you're going to erase all the competition and all the work is going to go to you. Nothing at all. I mean, I think it's kind of a illusion to think that, oh, you're going one day to have so much experience because you've been working for 20 years and that everything is going to be solved, and that is an illusion. As in to say, many people get a lot of work and they're not the best, as in technically speaking. And there are other people who are very, very good. Technically speaking, they get 10s at university and such, but then they don't eat anything at all. And my case is one of those cases. I mean, when I went to university, it was absolutely not experience, but my marks certificate, the certificates where my marks appeared, all 10s and 9s, and that's the highest marks, I mean, in Spain, for those of you who don't know that, as in, it's like scoring an A or an A plus or an A plus plus in the United States. I got very, very high marks, but then it doesn't really influence. Actually, I have known people who have told me, colleagues I mean, that they specifically avoid hiring people. Okay, very good. So, join, turn your camera, and when you want to speak, please, of course, turn on your microphone. But please don't turn your camera, because this way we can have more broadband, more. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please remember to turn off your camera. As I was saying, good marks, this obsession people have with good marks and a lot of such, not have on how, for instance, on how successful you can be as a translator. It's completely unrelated. The things we think that are necessary for instance, getting jobs and such and being successful, etc., 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 are simply conventions that we think are true simply because the current state of society has told us so. But that, in regards to how not successful, but how effective that actually is completely unrelated. If those tips, if I can start telling you and explaining to you those tips, those pieces of first information, if I actually manage to relay that to you, then I think we are doing something very interesting in these activities. Thank you very much. If you want to please ask of things, please do so, because I would very much like, let me check this out, I want to and can be seen. Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So, well, please, if you have more questions, more things to ask and such, please go on. I would very much like to hear you, to listen to you first. If you want, you can also write them on the chat. Open it. Very good. Very good. All right. Yes. Do you have questions? Is everything all right? Can you hear me? Can you see me well? I want to make sure, since there might be a little bit of delay depending on the country and such, I want to make sure that everything can be heard all right. Do you listen to what I say? Can you listen to what I say okay? Okay, that's writing. If you want something to speak more slowly, please do so, of course.
Yes, I have other question. I would like to know how did you get your first clients?
First clients, one of the most frequently asked questions, I think. It's kind of a good point of entry, I think, because you will probably won't probably imagine what I think what always happens, what 99% of the time happens. I didn't get them as, that is to say, my clients, I didn't contact them by effort, by applying a lot of effort. I didn't do that. I didn't contact them by studying more and more at university. I didn't have a lot of connections to start with. I didn't had the best curriculum. I didn't have the best experience and such. And especially, I didn't sit on my computer all day long. That is to say, it's not like, oh, I don't have clients, then I'm going to be depressed and such. None of that. What did happen is, first of all, chance. That's to say, I got them by sheer coincidence. For instance, I remember it was very, very funny, because imagine you are connected on the internet very late at night, and you're browsing pros.com, a website, pros, you know it. It's a very interesting website which allows us translators, translators, and also students, translation students, to get into contact with each other and with potential clients with a setup that is not like Facebook, but it's kind of a social media platform. Well, imagine you're late up at night and you're browsing this, and you have sent some how do you say it, some applications before, okay, and you haven't had any success, and then you find something completely unappealing, in the sense that, for instance, it's a job application to do translations late at night, also late at night. That is to say, for instance, from 1 in the morning, 1 at night, one also, that is to say 1 a.m. From 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. o'clock in the morning. That is to say, that's the translation opportunity that appears on the internet. Well, you sent your CV and such, and then they answer to you, and then, okay, you can come here and work with us, and then the job doesn't ever happen. Nothing at all. You stay a little bit late at night, and you ask, sorry, I was here and I am preparing for this job and such, and then they tell you, oh, we're sorry, but we haven't heard anything yet about the client and such, so for the time being we are not going to do these jobs. And then one day, like months later, they contact you and they offer you a job, but you haven't worked with them at all before. That's the way I had my first client, one of my first clients, and completely by chance. Because imagine if I hadn't been laid up at night, I haven't been doing things on the internet so late at night, I wouldn't have gotten it at all. I wouldn't have got that connection. It's simply by something that happens by coincidence. And that has happened in all of my my connections, I would say. For instance, another one. One day, by chance, by complete chance, a company contacted me and sent me, oh, we would like to work with you and such, but I forgot. I completely forgot about that application. That it's not even an application I sent, but a request they sent me. And the thing is that I completely forgot about it, as in complete. Then I remembered one week later, oh, I haven't answered that email. And I went there and, oh, I got to type. Is this all right or yet and such and such? Is this still all right? Okay. Send us your documents, your files and such. Okay, we're going to test your different skills and such. And finally, guess what that company was? Which company that was? The company where I'm working currently with the European Commission, and soon enough with the European Parliament too. I mean, it was by chance that I remembered that that application, that connection. The same can be said. Something happened really recently, also by chance, and it was completely amazing, because imagine that one old friend of yours, and perhaps saying friend might be a little too much, as in an old classmate, a former classmate of yours contacts you to ask you a favor and such, and you say, okay, I have no problem helping you, but not related to translation or anything, but a simple favor. And that might have happened to you, and perhaps something completely unrelated, as in, I don't know, something about helping him or her choose a present for his or her mother or something like that. And you're okay, let's talk and such, and let me help you, of course, there's no problem and such. Oh, I thank you very much for the help you're giving me. Please tell me if I can give you anything in return. I can pay you. I mean, it wasn't completely important, as in it wasn't something also big. No, it was simply a little favor I did for that old classmate of mine. And then I remembered, okay, you're currently, you're still at university and such. Yes, I'm still at university. I'm collaborating with some teachers and such. Well, if you want, I said this something, as in, I could have said that, and perhaps I didn't, and perhaps I wouldn't have said that. I could have said something else, something completely different. Oh, if you can tell your teachers and your colleagues at university that I am a translator, and if they ever know about something that they would like to translate, well, I can help them. I have different linguistic combinations. I have my accompaniments. Okay. 2 months later, I am working with that university. By chance, completely by chance, completely by coincidence, as in the opportunity will get to, you will find the opportunity given certain conditions, and we can talk about that in the next place if you would like to. But the things you would find that completely change your situation. And for me, for instance, for me working with the university is very, very convenient. First of all, because I earn a lot of money, much more money than what I would earn for the same quantity of words with a translation agency. For instance, translation agencies have lower rates than direct clients, but that is not something to be upset about. That is something like, for instance, if you buy things from an original producer, you will probably have to pay less than if you buy things from a distributor, because a distributor adds or takes away a little bit of that payment for its work as a distributor. It's not the producer, it's not the end client, but it helps to connect. And that is why if the distributor sends you work in a stable basis, you don't have to agree, not agree, you don't have to worry about handling the jobs. You don't have to be a project manager. You don't have to worry about invoicing those individual clients. You don't have to worry about marketing. Then it's obvious, it's logical for me. I think it's not something we should be upset if they send you more work and then, okay, well, I sent you more work, and then you offer me a rate that is not as high as the rate you would get if you worked with a direct client. Why I say that? Why I say this? Because I have seen in many places, for instance in Facebook and such, that people get completely mad, crazy mad about translation agencies, and if, oh, you pay me 5 cents per word when you would have to pay me 8 cents per word. And I think it's quite exaggerated. I actually, let me say this in a more clear way. I think that we translators in general love complaining about everything, and we are the victims of the world, and everything, and everyone hates us, and everyone is against us, and that's why we have to rebel. And if you get how do you say it, an offer for a rate that is not your rate, well, you have to crucify the person who said you your really, I mean, let me tell you this, and this is the real story. Once I made an offer on Facebook about a project. Okay, it's not the biggest budget at all in the world. Okay, I understand that. And I know that if you want to have some minimum tariffs, some minimum rates, and those minimum rates do not match with what I can offer you, well, you tell me, no, I won't work with you, because that's my decision and I respect that, and nobody can not discuss, but nobody can argue that. If you don't want to work in a certain conditions, well, you don't do that and such. And that is that. The thing is that I made an offer and somebody started arguing, trying to argue that in a certain way I was an exploiter, or as in I was trying to impose them work, and I was something like a slave owner. Just by saying, okay, I have this job and I pay this, would you like to work with me or not? And they told me, they started saying very mad, as in they got very mad because they thought it was some sort of slave owner for simply offering, not imposing, but simply offering, as in, would you like to work with me? These are the conditions. If you don't want to, well, because you don't simply like the conditions, well, completely understandable. But as in, what state, what kind of mind frame are we developing as people, as each individual person? As in, translators in general are very, very, very not pleasant people. I don't mean you, of course. You're very pleasant people, and I know that. But I know people from our guild, or that is to say, our profession, who are very difficult to work with. Very, very difficult. And why is that? And that is why I wanted to, first of all, deconstruct some things we believe are real, but those things we believe are simply illusions. We believe in because somebody else has told us so, and not because they work. Those things don't work. For instance, depending on the experience doesn't work. I don't have the best experience in the world, and I work with the European Commission. When I started working with them, I didn't have the best experience. But even so, I got hired. And I don't have 10 years as a freelancer. But even so, I got that job. Why? By chance. But the thing is, okay, by chance, but I don't have that I don't have those coincidences. What do I do? There are certain conditions that it is very, very, very necessary that we develop, each one of us develops, and we each develop in order to seize that chance. There are very, very good stories about this. Do you know these that is to say, that old story from Greek myth about, I think the name was Kairos and Kronos. You know it? If you can write that on the chat and such. Have you heard about it? Anytime? But I think it's very useful to use what those original peoples told us about those characters in their myths. Kairos, one of the gods of time in Greek myth, not simply Kronos. For instance, when we think about time, etymologically speaking, we think, for instance, chronological. Sorry if I mix sometimes Latin and Greek myths, but we are talking about the antiquity. That is to say, the older times in our cultures, European cultures. I know that there are some of you who are not from Europe, but let's use this frame, as in this context, to also have some feedback between cultures and such, and use what is useful about it. That is to say, chronological. When we think about time, we think about chronological. Logic, and chrono comes from chronos, and chronos is one of the words for time in Greek, as far as I remember. Well, there is another. Actually, there are more than one. But among all the words that exist in Old Greek for time, which are not the same, by the way, we can talk about this very deeply, and this influences even translations of the Bible. There are many. Let me anticipate this. There are many mistakes in Bible translations that have completely shaped. Those mistakes, that have completely shaped, and not irrevocably, but very, very harmfully. They have harmfully shaped our culture in Europe, and by extension in Latin America and the rest of the world. Let's remember that the Bible is one of the most translated books in the world, and the way it was translated and the things they did when they translated the Bible, and the mind, not simply mind frame, but the conceptions, the worldview that served as a basis for the translation of the Bible, were completely harmful for our history. And I can prove this. If you want, we can talk about it at another time. But as I was saying, just simply to go again as regards our and the topics we were talking about here, chronological, chronos, time. It's one kind of time. There's another kind of time, which is kairos. Simply a footnote for this. Greek people in old myths, usually they had a word for a concept. And the thing they did is to build a story according to that concept. As in, they explained the functioning of that worldview according to stories. It's not simply something they did, that is to say, to write about and to tell these stories, these myths about Troja or about Aphrodite or Hephaestus and such, and Zeus, of course. They didn't do this simply because they wanted to be the next Stephen King's. Sorry for the anachronism, but it's not something. It's not because they wanted to create stories like people who live today do. For people as in authors, I mean, for instance, J.K. Rowling, they didn't want to write the next Harry Potter or the former Harry Potter. What they did was to explain their worldview through these stories. And the thing is, why do I tell you this? Because Kairos, with K, you can find that, was one of these characters. He was a god of time. I think it's a he, as far as I remember. Perhaps you may find some representations of this character as having female characteristics, but as far as I remember, it was a he. Kairos was a he, also. That is to say, he was a man. And the thing is, he was a god of time, and he was a god specifically about proper time. As in, when's the proper time to do something? It's not any time, but okay, I have fulfilled all the conditions I had to fulfill to do this thing I want to do. Well, Kairos helps you there. That's the myth they told you. Kairos was actually chance, so to speak. He was chance in the sense that chance as in coincidence, but at the same time he was chance as in I have this chance. For instance, the things I told you about finding the job offer I found late at night, or the things I found later when I started working, and I continued to work with the company through which I work with the European Commission. That's for Greek people, that's Kairos. What I want to tell you with this is that chance, Kairos here, was represented in a very particular way. Imagine like an angel, something like an angel. He was a man who was shaped similarly to what we currently nowadays think about angels. He had wings, so to speak. As far as I remember, he also had a balance, and he also had winged feet. He had winged feet. That is to say, he was very fast. He came and flew by very fast. What they wanted to tell you about this is that chance is something you have to attend to in such a way, so focused. You have to be so focused on using the chances that you get that if you don't do that, you can actually end up losing your chances. What I mean with this is that people usually, very, very usually lose a lot of chances they get once because they start getting nervous. Oh, I don't want to do it. Today I woke up in the morning and I don't want to do what I said I wanted to do. I have no desire to do that. I am not feeling well today. Oh, I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to surrender, because end up straying from the path they told they wanted to walk through. For instance, I wanted to build my own company. Oh, but I failed. Then I am not going to ever do it again. No, or again. No, I'm starting a fight with all the people I work with, and then it's their fault. It's their fault that I don't get the opportunities I want. All these things are the reasons why you eventually end up losing chances. And the more you lose, it's what I want to say is that people start thinking that, oh, I don't have connections, I lack connections, I lack experience, I lack knowledge, I lack university degrees. And it's not that the reason why you don't get, for instance, the job you want. Not simply the job, for instance, the relationships you want, the opportunities you want. It's not that. It's not what you lack, actually. The problem is that which is, let's put it this way, what is inside of you, and you don't get rid of it. That is to say, for instance, you're not controlling your emotions. You're not deciding on what you think. You're not deciding what you really want to do. You're losing time all the time. You're losing time thinking about the things that others have done to you, and not thinking about the things you want to do, you personally. Not deciding that is one of the, let's put it this way, one of the roots by which you end up losing all the chances that you actually get. The problem is not that you don't get chances. The problem is that you lose them continually. Okay, and actually we are nearing more or less the final part of today's lecture, not lecture, but today's open talk. And what I want to tell you is that if you start opening your mind to going beyond what the prevailing paradigms in today's world, what the economy tells you you have to do, and if you don't do that, you're ruined. No, you don't actually depend on that. You learn to use different things. And these different things are much more, let's put it this way, much more subtle than simply the experience you have or the a number of connections you have. It's not the physical things that you lack. It's the subtle development, let's put it this way, the psychic development that you have to develop in yourself that will help you. And I can prove you this, for instance, in noticing things that nobody else notices, actually. For instance, people start saying that we translators have it very difficult because we don't have enough work, and we have to, of course, fight each other to get jobs and to get materials and such, and we will probably be dethroned by machines and machine translators. And with this, we have a lot of time to start fighting each other. I remember that we did that, especially in when I was at university. It was something that could be seen all the time. Oh, you're going to fight it. You're going to have to fight each other because the translation market is very, very difficult. And nobody notices that it's completely impossible for us translators not to have, for instance, if we want, in the sense of the physical material that there is, well, it's impossible for us not to have work. If you want to have work, translation is one of the safest, I would say, bets in the world. Why? because we are speaking beings. That is to say, we are, as in human beings, we human beings speak all the time, and not simply with physical vibrations. Of course, the people who are mute, they also speak in their own way. They also communicate in their own way. We have lots of ways to communicate, and if we didn't communicate, actually humanity wouldn't exist. And the thing I want to tell you is, people start obsessing about fighting each other simply because there's not going to be any work. It's impossible for us not to have work, physically speaking. As in, we are speaking all the time. It's impossible not to produce material to translate. Absolutely impossible. We can, for instance, we can think that petroleum is going to run out before we even have some danger of speech running out. It's impossible. We start producing all the time. And if I wanted, I could hire somebody else right away to translate this meeting. But the thing is that people start obsessing about things that are simply change that are given by what other people have told you. And if you base what you're going to do on the things that other people have told you, then you will simply get to what those others, I mean society, the time you were born in, the place you were born in, the country you were born in, etc., etc. You will only get to the limits that those places, that those times, that society has, that the other has, and not beyond. If you want to do your dream, if you want to turn your dream into reality, if you want to, for instance, be a translator, if you want to do you want to be a professional translator with your own conditions, then one of the things that we have to learn, first of all, is to go beyond those limits. The key is that those limits aren't physical. It's not about, I haven't worked because society doesn't have work. There's a lot of unemployment. No, that's not the key. That's simply a condition, one of many conditions that there are in the world. Because if we were talking about, all babies in the world who are born in difficult conditions, you have to die. Because, of course, you weren't born in the best conditions in the world. That doesn't work like that. If you want to do something, if you want to turn your dream into a reality, I can teach you some tools, some concepts for you to do that. But the first thing that we have to learn is that if we are restricted, we limit ourselves to what others tell you that you can't do, that it is impossible for you, then you won't get anywhere. The good thing to know is that other, and with this I finished today's meeting, but we can also give some tips if you want to have 5 more minutes, so to speak. The first thing that it's very important to notice is that other who tells you what you can do, what you cannot do, what you need to do, or what you might or might not do, is not simply outside. For instance, when you think something that you don't want to think, and we can see this all the time in our daily lives, that's a thought that you didn't decide. Where does it come from? There's a certain state, let's put it this way, there's a certain field in our minds that completely encompasses everything. And as long as we don't decide on that decides what we do and what we don't do. It's very important that us translators learn to differentiate ourselves from that. Why? Because, for instance, that completely decides on your too. Of course, it also decides on your translation capabilities. And I have verified that, as in what I told you before about the Bible translations. They were completely decided on things that the translators themselves didn't decide. but they were influenced by them. And due to that influence, the Bible translations were completely harmed. They were completely vilified. They were completely badly done. And that influenced the whole of the world. That's why I say that translation is one of the most dangerous professions in the world. We don't really know the amount of responsibility that we accept when we decide to become translators.
Yeah.
The thing is, and with this I finish completely today, this meeting, is that being a translator does not depend on professions. That is why, as in to say, for instance, when you want to communicate, and this is something that, for instance, hermeneutical, I think that's the name, hermeneutical perspectives of translations have said, when you want to speak, when you want to communicate, there's a translation process going on. If we use that hypothesis, a whole world opens up. Because, for instance, when you wanted to go to build your own company, when you want to build your own relationships, translation processes are being used there. Thing is, are you using them yourself, or are you letting those processes be used by the conditioning, the mental condition of the time, of the society, of the place, of the country you were born in? That is something very interesting to start noticing, because if we notice that, we are taking our first step towards freeing ourselves from that. And I am not saying something, it's not something grandeur. No, it's something completely day to day, because when the people surrender and they give up on their dreams, they are letting another decide on what they want to do. If you want to go beyond that, I can teach you the steps to do it. And it's a translational process and way and path. And if you want, I will, from the next time we meet, teach you more about this. Having said that, since I know that you two want to get some tips and such, please, if you want to ask some tips, questions and such, write them on the chat, and I will make sure to answer, to help you in any way I can. I have some tools I can offer you. For instance, if you have some questions, write them on the chat, and if not, I would like to close today's conference with a tool for those of you who don't have yet any professional commissions yet, and you are looking for commissions, and you are looking to get into the market, into the labor market officially. I have a special tool for you which I used for the first time, which I also got by chance, complete chance, which I can tell you the story at a later date. And I think that it will also be of much help to you. If you want to, please write it on the chat. If not, I can go directly to this tool I told you about.
Yeah, well, I can write for some reason on the chat, but yeah, it'd be cool to know.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you know about it. It's a site. Let's say all this journey is necessary, as in learning to go beyond those preconceptions, those first limits. When I started doing my own training in that regard, one of the first things I discovered by chance was BabelCube. BabelCube is a website, something a little bit like a social media platform, not exactly, but similar, that allows us translators to get in contact with authors all over the world, to offer them to translate their books and have them be bought online. As in, you get in contact with an author at the website, you see that they have published a book that is of interest to you, you offer them to translate it. And once you have done that, having signed an appropriate agreement and such, it's completely legal. I have already worked with it. It's completely reliable. You do that, and then you will get royalties from each copy of the book that is bought. It's very useful. For instance, if you really want to get experience, because it's not something you depend on, but you can use it, it's okay. Then BabelCube is one of the best ways to get started, which is not the whole way, of course. It's not the whole path. But if you want to get your first commissions without depending on whether others contact you, use BabelCube. They have novels, they have economy-related articles, they have non-fiction books, history books, well, not novellas, but not as large as books, etc., etc., etc. And you can use that. And that is why I want to help you. I mean, one of the reasons why I do these activities is to help you in a commensurate way, as in a very concrete way. Use that if you want to. If you want to get your first jobs, use that, and you will get a complete control over your commissions. Perhaps you don't get a lot of money, but the thing is, that's better than doing a thumbs up, for instance, for the new episode of Game of Thrones. That is official. You can add that in a completely reliable way to your curriculum, and you have your first books published. And well, not books, but books that you have translated. Use that if you want. I have also other ways to help you. I will comment them. Yes, from the next time on. You will get, as I said, the recording of this meeting at a later date. And to finish, well, I would like to simply say thank you very much for attending today's meeting. It's the first time I gave a meeting in English. I hope that everything could be understood easily.
Yeah, you have a very nice English accent. So
thank you. Thank you very much. Well, if you have found this interesting, well, once I have sent you the links and such, and I will publish the next announcements for the next meetings, I would very much like for you to, well, or either to write a positive comment or whatever comment you want to write, and to share. This for the time being, this is completely for free. As in, but in that regard, I would very much appreciate if you also share the news and such. Thank you very much. Well, and see you on February. February. Yes, it will be monthly. I'm thinking about doing this monthly, and it will probably be end February, our next
So this is the first one?
Yes, of course. That's why if you have more questions and such, I know that you will have more questions. Well, come to the next meeting, and we will listen to you, and you can also ask all the questions you want, and this continually, of course. For me, it's going to be continuous. This is a long path for me.
Till the end of the world.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.